Hello and welcome. My name is Guy Griffin, and today we're going to be attempting a new home in Frostpunk with a few self-imposed challenges. In addition to playing on Extreme, we're going to be attempting to have no preventable deaths, not let any of the Londoners get away, and accept all the refugee waves. Oh, and we're going to do this all without the beacon. I'm going to try to explain my thought process and the reasons why I make the decisions that I make here. I'm also going to lay out my roadmap of going forward, what I'm going to do, when and where. For example, we're going to have a bunch of workplaces set up in this quadrant. There's going to be residential, that's going to be over here, and hunters' huts are going to be in this section, as well as a few miscellaneous buildings are going to be over near the steelworks. For the first day, I need wood. That gives us everything we need. I split the workers between these two piles, mainly because so that the gathering posts that will eventually be set up here, they expire at the same time, and they also last till the end of that day. That they have like 12 wood in them at the end of that day, so they last the entire time. If I put everybody from here over into here, I would have one worker left over that would throw somewhere, and this pile would be gone. Then still have to do stuff with this pile during that day. It just works out real nicely, so that's why I split those workers. We'd only need 20 steel on the first day, so that's enough. And then the coal is 72, which is 10 hours of running the generator. Considering we're running it from 1800 to 05, that's 9 hours, and you need another hour to turn it on. So yeah, that works out just nicely. This is essentially going to be the first day, just gathering stuff.
A new law has passed.
Let's see here. What am I going to talk about? It's really important you get these first couple of days exactly right. If you get behind, you shoot yourself in the foot. This will leave us with just barely enough to get 10 wood to throw into research, which will run in the middle of the night with extended shift. There's a reason and an argument to be made of where to put an extended shift. For example, on the extended shift, I'm going to be doing faster gathering. However, some people may sit here and yell at me, well, faster gathering is so that you get more resources. If you want more resources, why don't you make a gathering post and use an extended shift on the gathering post? Because then you could start the next morning with a lot more supplies. You could have all those tents you want. You could have all the research you could want and not worry about anything. And then the faster gathering will actually end at like 0900. But you could start the research on whatever you research after that at 0600 and just skip faster gathering in entirety. So you could get more resources and be a little ahead on research. The reason I don't do that, and I go ahead and do that on research, is because I do want faster gathering later. That's going to be a thing I'm going to take at some point or another. And like, it's a free day to get research out of the way. A free day. You get one free extended shift. And the way I see it, I can get resources later. I can skim by without having all of the resources as quickly as possible. I want them as quickly as possible, but I don't need to hit it that hard. And playing without the beacon, your 50/15/15 population, this is it. You only have 15 engineers. You will only have 15 engineers until the day that you get the the refugee waves. And when you hit the refugee waves, you're going to throw all those people into medical posts because you're going to be slammed with sick. So you can't spare more engineers to be thrown into research, like ever at all. This is it. This is all you got. So our bottleneck is not going to be resource gathering. Our bottleneck is going to be how fast we can research stuff. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Similarly, as far as decisions and controversial decisions, and like, why are you doing this instead of that? I am going to be going for child shelters as well, and which will go into engineer apprentices for much the same reason, to get research just better. Child labor would be a godsend right now. I could get all the things I wanted, much for the same argument that throwing extended shift into a gathering post could get me more resources. Except I come back to the same thing that I came to earlier, which is research is really important. You will not get anywhere without research, and you have absolutely no real way to. You don't have extra engineers to throw into your workshops, so I'm going to have the children help out in the workshops to give us that little edge, that little boost, because that's where I feel they are. Excuse me, hiccups. That's where I feel they are the most. They do the most good. You could do child labor. And you could just, like, not ever care about coal. You could throw them at the gathering posts that are meant for coal. Like 10 in here, then the other 5 can go into the cookhouse, and you just never care anymore. Like I said, you can just barely skim by without it. And because of that, I can afford to get away with not having it. It is like the super turbo hard mode. If you do it that way. In some ways it makes it easier, in some ways it makes it harder. It's all about trade-offs, and I would rather have the extra research instead of the extra resources. So that's why I make that decision as well. Well, I'll eventually make it after I get soup. The third thing I need to talk about is the food supply and how I'm going to be managing that. Is because with a hunter's hut, because I will be building one on the first day, we're going to be bringing in 11 food. With hunter's gear, that'll be 16, and hunter's gear will be the second thing I research. It'll be the thing I research on day 2. On standard meals, before we get soup, although I'm going to only start making food rations once I get soup. So on soup, 16 daily food, raw food will turn into 40 rations. We have 80 people. Our food is going to run out at some point or another. The instant I get the next tier of research done, I will be immediately beelining towards a hothouse. After I get, like, heaters and sawmills done. The hothouse gives... I'm not looking at it, so I don't know the exact numbers. But a hothouse is comparable to a flying hunter's hangar that has the hunting tactics upgrade applied to it. In terms of raw food gain, it is comparable. Except the hothouse can be set on overtime hours, and it's a tier earlier than the the flying hunter's hut. So I will be running the hunter's hut with, and it will have hunter's gear to allow me to even make it to that point, because even with the hunter's gear, we will be running out of food literally the second that thing comes online. So that upgrade is required in order to allow us to get to that point, to make that transition without people starving. Then I'm mostly going to run off of the hunter's hut. I'm just going to take 10 people out of the hothouse. I'm going to take 10 people out of the hunter's hut, put them into the hothouse, and then leave 5 people in the hunter's hut to just bring in a little extra. it really does. It pays to leave 5 people in there to bring in. Here's like, to bring in a little extra food, because during the Londoners event, you're going to want to start working off of standard meals in order to not take, in order to get down on discontent, in order to not take hope losses, because taking hope losses during the Londoners event is, well, it's unacceptable. Like, in any form. If you can prevent it, like, go for it. So we will be running off of standard meals during the Londoners event. At the same time, around the Londoners event is when we will be doing the Flying Hunters upgrades in order to upgrade our one Hunter's hut into a Flying Hunters, and then we'll make a second one because we will be tearing down the hothouse to make a infirmary somewhere. And so that's the second point of the not playing without a beacon, is we only have one steam core. This I need to address now. So the hothouse is there's no debating it. This is where the steam core needs to go. I could put it into other places, like a wall drill, for example, but I found that the wood that is in the canyon itself that you can get from sawmills, that's all you need. You don't need any more. So the wall drill is a moot point. I don't need it. The coal mines are a good contender, except I just can't spare that steam core to get out of that hothouse. I can't do it. It needs to be in there. The alternative is me using a second hunter's hut, or a third hunter's hut for that matter, and like, that just takes up way too many people. It's 15 workers per hunter's hut without the upgrades. I don't know why I'm yawning. And the hothouse, I really need to get that out of my system. The hothouse takes 10 people and is just far and beyond the output of what the hunter's hut can get. I'd need like 2 or 3 of them in order to match that thing's output to get at least the daily amount of food I need to have people not starve, or at least go hungry for that matter. And that's just, it's too many people. It uses up way too many people to man those. Because I only have 50 workers. Only have 15 engineers, you only have 15 kids. Your most important resource is your population, and you need to make these people go as far as humanly possible with the limited numbers that you have. And so I could throw people into a coal mine, because then I'm not using thumpers. Thumpers are a little bit less efficient than the coal mine. Just as a standalone building, the coal mine is pretty good. You need a surplus, you need a healthy backstock of workers in order to properly abuse coal thumpers, which we just don't have, but I really don't have a choice. It's just what's gonna have to be done. It's that, or I take the steam core out of the hothouse and throw it in the coal mine. And then I need to send literally everyone. Because that'd be like 45 people working hunters' huts, and then 5 people to work in the coal mine, and that alone won't even just... No, don't do it. That's the first part of that thing's lifetime. The second part of that thing's lifetime is going to be going into an infirmary once the -60 double temperature drop hits during the Londoners event. Because halfway through the Londoners event, the temperature drops 2 levels, from -40 to -60, and that is when I start to worry about the gravely ill. Now, I have an option there as well that I could take, but the infirmary really is the best way to go. The alternative is to make a factory, and make prosthetics like there's no tomorrow, but you would need a hilarious amount of prosthetics. It's not even funny, don't do it. The factory also doesn't give 20 beds for gravely ill lion. So, there's that. And because I don't plan on making prosthetics, I will be going with Sustain Life at the start into overcrowding when that happens. So we will not be taking radical treatment because I don't plan to ever build the factory. I can't spare that steam core to be in any other place but the hothouse and the infirmary. And I am not tearing down the infirmary. I could to make like a few prosthetics, but I would rather be using the research in other places. I'd rather just straight up not research the factory to begin with. So that's that thing's lifetime. At the start of each day, I'm going to be religiously checking workplaces to see who is sick where, and rescheduling people to not impact my my bottom line, and to go for the goals that I'm trying to go for. Because there's an order to how I want to allocate the man hours, the limited man hours that we have to get the most use out of them. So I'm going to go for our daily usage of coal and food production first. Just split between those. If I have sick that's impacting those, I have a problem. So those are basically on the same level. Like, that's it. That's game over. I don't know how I would have fucked up to allow that much sick to, like, exist. That's like 30 plus 6 or something or another. If that happens, that's game over, so I don't need to worry about splitting those two into their own levels. That's just the first priority is to get those two sorted, and I'll get those two sorted basically at the same time. After that, I need to work on wood and steel for obvious reasons. I would like to keep steel production up as high as possible because that has a very limited throughput of the steelworks. I could always throw people at sawmills. I'll have wood. Although wood will be my limiting factor at the later levels. I'll actually have too much steel and not enough wood. But that can be managed. That's if I just completely stick to manning the steelworks first and the sawmill second. So that will be a slight balancing act of what I need and when I need it. Then after that, I'm going to work on excess food, which I will already be doing, technically speaking. But with the people that are hunting, I can't take them out of there. I can't shuffle them around easily, so they'll be staying in there. So excess food will be the next step. I don't know why I'm yawning. And then excess coal will be the last thing to worry about after that. And then there's no other resource to be gathered from. So yeah, there's that. As far as research is going to go, there are a few tricks I could do to keep research up as high as possible. For example, taking the workers that are resting in the medical post and trade out the sick. So the sick goes into work in the medical post as one of the people that's resting. So the workers will be working. They'll actually be curing them as the day goes on, and then I'll have the full amount of people that are in the workshops. Like I said, I will be religiously checking the sick and rescheduling people when it hits 0600 each day. Trying to think if there's anything else. So during the Londoners event, we will be hitting Hope as hard as possible up until the end, and then we are going to taper off. Because there's a way to make it so that you can end the Londoners event, basically. How am I yawning? Basically, you can end the Londoners event, like, with a button click. And you can choose when it ends. So we will be letting the speeches happen to get the okay, you talked, now it's my turn speech at the end. that will drop the amount of Londoners down to, I believe, 4. And that'll just be the last event that happens, and then time runs out eventually at some point or another. After that, all I have to do is I have to hit patrol on the guard stations, and the next morning that'll end the event, because they'll finally, the hope, it's based on where your hope is. If it's low, it will, if they're not gaining but it's too low, they will still think they have a chance, and the event will keep going. If you raise it ever so slightly, that will be from hitting the patrol, they will finally get it in their heads, okay, maybe this is a terrible idea. There's only 4 of us, we might as well stay here. But it happens based on where your hope meter is, and not based on how many Londoners there are. So you can just, with a button click, it's like, okay, now you're staying. And because of that, we will be having the Londoners event go on for as long as possible, up until the final day. And then we'll hit it when there's like 12 hours remaining. And I'm doing that is to make it so that we can just get extra materials, extra resources to prepare for the refugee waves, because the refugee waves are going to be the big test, especially with the sick that happens during the refugee waves. The amount of houses that you need to build are quite a bit. You need about 22 houses. You go from 80 to 91, 291. So yeah, you need 22 houses in order to house everybody by the end of the 3rd wave. You need the food in order to feed everybody, and you just get slammed with sick and gravely ill. You get slammed with everything. It is the big test. And what's kind of important is the shuffling of sick in and out of the infirmary, as it's possible that somebody may die just from going from the infirmary, because they get kicked out of the infirmary to make room for the gravely ill, and then they go over to the medical posts, and then they'll be shuffling back and forth. There's a possibility someone could actually die, because when they're out and on the streets, they're like their timer until the point where they die from being sick. That keeps ticking. They're technically going to treatment and not in treatment, and their timer ticks down while in that state. So it's really important that I manage that right so that nobody dies, as it's entirely possible someone could die from that. And that's actually like the main, that will, if you do everything right, that could just make or break your entire playthrough, because one person dies. So it's really important I handle that right. And so letting the Londoners event go for as long as possible is to continue to get a little bit more resources, just get a little bit more research done, get a little bit more houses built, so that you could prepare and like focus on what's important during that event. It is curing the sick. And then after that, like if you get through that, and then you if no one dies on you, everybody's housed, everybody's fed, you have you start building hunters' huts like there's no tomorrow, to get your food stockpile, to get finally just not redlining it, because we will be redlining like everything from here to the end of time. Coal will never be over 100. Food will never be over 20. Things like that. We will be up against the wall, hitting the deck running, and we will never stop until I get those 291 people. And then I have workforce to like throw at things to get backstocks. Finally, for once. And when that happens, like, you're good, you're golden, you're smooth sailing from that until the end of the scenario. There's absolutely no problems whatsoever during the storm. Some workplaces will close down, but with the backstock you make, it won't be needed. You'll also be pretty much done with all the research you'll ever want. And I mean, you could get a few extras, but yeah. So yeah. That's basically how this playthrough is going to unfurl. I'm going to be doing. Oh, by the way, I'm also going to be going down order. I'm not. People might have caught that when I said I was getting the patrols. The reason I like order is because your food is just there's no food. There's no food. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of talking about my ass here. You could do whatever the other one's called. What is the other one called? Religion? Faith? Faith, excuse me. You could do faith. But to my knowledge, the faith abilities to raise hope, because you need to raise hope as much as possible during the Legionnaires event to not lose people to the Legionnaires, to keep that final, after I make my own speech, there's only 4 people left. If there's 5 people, it gets tougher. You have to raise hope even higher in order to convince them, so you want that as low as possible. The hope gainers, the things that raise hope in faith, I believe those require rations. Like, they all require rations in order to have them to run. I know I've never done faith, so I have absolutely no idea what it does. I just know about it in passing. I might be wrong here. If I'm talking out of my ass, someone, correct me. But all those faith guys, I believe they all require rations, which we simply do not have to spare. Are not spammable. We can't spam them anyway. And the watchtowers and the guard stations, they only require 1 person to man. Morning gatherings are a free bonus that's global. You don't have to build a building. And with the guard stations, even though they only need 1 person to man, you can put someone who's in treatment in there and you will gain the hope bonus and the discontent reduction. You don't need healthy people to be in the guard towers. You don't even need to heat them. They just need to be within range and have someone assigned to them. That assigned person does not need to be healthy. So we will be cutting down on our workforce by 2 people during the Legionnaires event. Although, honestly, those should be 6, so really you haven't lost anything. You gain free hope bonuses that are pretty passive, all things considered. And you don't have to throw food rations at them in order to get the hope bonuses. You will need to do it. You'll need to do a few patrols in order to keep the tendency from gaining. But like a few rations here and there versus doing like all of them all day every day, yeah, there's a no-brainer. You need to go down to order in order to do this. There's a strong argument for the House of Healing, not using the steam core in the infirmary, but if my knowledge is right, the House of Healing has a death associated with it. Somebody goes in there to get healed and he's like, no, it's my time, and then he just keels over on the spot. That doesn't happen with the infirmary, so no, it's not going to happen. That would fail us our deathless checkbox objective thing. You will have 1 death, and that is the hobo that shows up on day 15 from Winterhome. That's a natural consequence of going without the beacon. And there's no way around that. So he doesn't count. He wasn't one of your people anyway. Now, so in order to space this right, to get to partition it off, I go 2 over, and then do it on the far side. And then over here, I'm going to go 3 over, 3 whole spaces over. I'm only going to do 1, and tent away. That's just to get it at the right spot to put down the hunter's hut. So that will do 3 in this first layer, and then 4 in the second, which will bring us up to 7. We only really need 6, but might as well. Then you need workshops. I'm putting the workshops over here for reasons. I don't have to spend that wood to make that connection. I could just put them right here because this is already a road. However, when you get the refugee waves, they come in along this. They come in along this road, which juts off from like the opposite side of the clock. Or is that a clock? I have no. Oh, is that a temperature gauge? I have no idea what this is. And so I want to put all of the medical posts are going to be in a semicircle facing on this side, and then there's going to be the care houses, and then there's going to be the infirmary just like right there. You really originally I had them over here, but that only magnifies the problem of them walking to the place in order to be cured to begin with. So they're going to be getting into treatment as soon as possible by placing the 24-hour open facilities over on this side, and then the workday hour buildings over on this side. We'll have two little islands of houses that will be heated with their own fighting arenas and guard stations, and then just hunter huts and then things. And yeah, that's what we're doing. I ramble and talk to myself. I just feel like being really, really clear on what. Ooh, we have 4. That's, There we go. There's absolutely no way I can spare the wood for you people. You're just gonna get over it. Yep. And that is the first day, with a lot of explaining.